Do you ever stop to think that the clothes you wear are more than just fabric? That they carry meaning, intention, and sometimes a hidden spiritual weight? The world often dismisses fashion as mere self-expression. But what if certain designs, symbols, and trends can unknowingly open doors to spiritual forces we'd rather avoid? Today, we're looking beyond the runway and into the deeper significance of our clothing choices. Is it just coincidence, or is there a subtle battle being waged for our souls, one garment at a time? Stay with us as we uncover this. The clothes we choose to wear are so much more than just fabric stitched together. They often carry meaning, clear intention, and sometimes even a profound spiritual weight. Every symbol you see, every intricate design, and even the specific way something is crafted can hold a much deeper significance than we might initially realize. The world frequently tells us that fashion is simply a form of self-expression, that what we decide to wear is just a matter of personal style. But what if I told you that certain things we put on our bodies can actually open doors to spiritual forces, some of which we should never, ever invite into our lives? Think about it for a moment. Why do certain symbols keep appearing over and over again in high fashion, in everyday streetwear, and in popular jewelry? Is it purely coincidence, or is there something more deliberate at play? The enemy has always worked subtly, skillfully disguising darkness in things that seem trendy, innocent, or even outwardly appealing. He knows that most people won't openly or consciously welcome demonic influences into their lives. So instead, he works through deception, cleverly embedding these influences into the things we casually accept, the things we wear, without giving them a second thought. Throughout history, various civilizations have used symbols on clothing as a powerful means of spiritual communication and identification. Warriors, for instance, often wore garments marked with specific sigils for protection or to invoke strength. Ancient priests and shamans would adorn themselves with particular patterns and colors, believing them to hold spiritual power. Even today, in many diverse cultures, people still use clothing as a means to invoke power, to attract luck, or to seek divine favor. But just as symbols can be used for good, they can also be perverted and used for evil. The enemy understands this principle very well and has strategically woven his dark influence into modern fashion, dressing it up as mere aesthetics while subtly using it to slowly desensitize people to the reality of darkness. Just look at the undeniable rise of occult imagery in today's fashion landscape. Not too long ago, certain symbols were primarily seen only within the confines of secret societies, in esoteric texts, or during ancient hidden rituals. Now these same symbols are plastered boldly on t-shirts, jackets, hats, and various accessories. The pentagram, the all-seeing eye, the inverted cross. These are not just cool or edgy designs. They are potent marks that have been used for centuries in rituals, witchcraft, and demonic practices. Yet people wear them every single day, often without realizing what these symbols truly represent or the spiritual energies they might attract. And it's not just the obviously dark ones. Some symbols are far more subtle. Think about ancient runes, alchemical signs, or even certain animal prints and patterns that hold deep spiritual significance in various dark traditions. Many of these designs actually originate from rituals specifically meant to summon spirits, to manipulate unseen energies, or to invoke power from sources that are anything but holy. When we choose to wear these things, we are, whether consciously or unconsciously, aligning ourselves with their original, often malevolent purpose. You might say, well, I don't believe in all that stuff. It's just a design to me. But let me ask you this. Does the spiritual realm operate based on what we personally believe, or does it operate on established spiritual laws? If a person walks into a fire, does it matter whether they believe they'll get burned or not? There's a reason the world has become so utterly fascinated with darkness. Have you noticed it? It's practically everywhere. You see it in music videos, in movies, all over social media, and especially, pervasively, in fashion. It used to be that occult symbols were carefully hidden, confined to secret societies, and known only to those deeply involved in their often nefarious practices. But now, these very same symbols are paraded boldly down high-fashion runways, printed on mass-market t-shirts, and sold to millions of unsuspecting consumers who often have no idea what they're truly wearing or representing. Some people dismiss it, thinking it's just another passing trend, just an aesthetic choice, or simply another edgy design meant to provoke. But the enemy doesn't primarily deal in mere trends. He deals in pervasive deception. Look closely at what's being aggressively pushed in fashion today: the pentagram, the inverted cross, the all-seeing eye. These are not random shapes haphazardly thrown together by designers trying to be creative or provocative. These are deeply significant marks of ancient rituals, powerful symbols of allegiance to something far darker than most people are willing to acknowledge or even consider. The world, and the fashion industry within it, wants you to think it's just art, just self-expression, just fashion. But make no mistake about it, these symbols have always had profound meaning. They always will. From the very beginning, the enemy has worked tirelessly to blur the lines between what is good and what is evil. He knows that if he can get people to casually play with darkness, even in ignorance, he's already won half the battle. So he cleverly repackages the occult, dresses it up to look cool, rebellious, and undeniably trendy. He takes what was once widely feared and recognized as dangerous, and he skillfully makes it seem desirable, even aspirational. And when people wear these things, whether they consciously believe in their power or not, they are inadvertently allowing those meanings, those associations, and potentially those spirits into their lives. Have you ever genuinely wondered why these particular symbols keep showing up season after season in the collections of the biggest, most influential fashion brands? Do you truly think it's just by accident, a random creative choice? No, it's almost certainly intentional. The world of high fashion, unfortunately, is filled with influential individuals who openly embrace spiritual darkness. Some of the biggest and most celebrated designers have spoken quite candidly about their involvement in various forms of mysticism, their deep fascination with esoteric knowledge, and even their personal participation in rituals. They don't always hide it. They often weave these influences directly into their creations, knowing full well that the more people wear these symbols, the more they normalize and mainstream what these symbols truly stand for. And it's not just about pentagrams and inverted crosses, which are more overtly recognizable. Sometimes the demonic influence is far more subtle, more insidious. Have you seen clothing covered in images of snakes, skulls, and various imagery of destruction and decay? Have you noticed how much of modern fashion seems to glorify death, rebellion, and chaos? That's not by accident either. The Bible clearly tells us that the enemy comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. And yet, those are the very themes and concepts being glorified and celebrated in much of contemporary fashion. They'll tell you it's just a style, just a form of self-expression. But whose expression is it really? The enemy absolutely loves to make sin look attractive, to make darkness appear alluring. He doesn't typically show up in obvious red horns and a pitchfork. He skillfully disguises himself in beauty, in creativity, in things that seem perfectly harmless at first glance. He makes darkness look utterly desirable. And the very moment we stop questioning it, the moment we passively accept it as just fashion, we potentially open a spiritual door that we were never ever meant to open. We have to be aware. We must be vigilant. Because the enemy is after much more than just your wardrobe choices. He's ultimately after your soul, and if he can get you to unknowingly celebrate the things that rightfully belong to his kingdom of darkness, if he can persuade you to wear them, to represent them, then he's already successfully made his way into your life, often undetected. It's truly time to wake up. It's time to stop letting the world dictate to us what is acceptable or fashionable. If something is fundamentally rooted in evil, it simply doesn't matter how trendy or popular it is. It has no rightful place in our lives. We cannot authentically claim to walk in the light while simultaneously clothing ourselves in overt symbols of darkness. We are called, as believers, to be set apart, to be different from the world. And that distinction starts with every single choice we make, including, very importantly, what we choose to wear. Look around at the world today, and you'll quickly see that fashion is no longer just about clothing. It's about pervasive influence. It's about powerful messaging. It's about systematically shifting culture and subtly reshaping beliefs, one trend at a time. And if you look closely, with discerning eyes, you'll notice something quite disturbing. The biggest names in the fashion industry, the most influential celebrities, and the most powerful voices in entertainment are constantly, and often aggressively, pushing imagery and symbols that are deeply rooted in darkness. This isn't happening by accident. There's an agenda. The fashion industry is undeniably one of the most influential forces on the entire planet. It dictates what millions of people wear, how they see themselves, and even what they come to value. And behind all the glitz and glamour, behind the flashing lights of the runway shows and the carefully curated, often deceptive social media posts, there's a spiritual agenda at play, one that is most certainly not from God. Why do you think so many celebrities are seen wearing clothing literally covered in demonic symbols? Why are so many of them seemingly drawn to pentagrams, all-seeing eyes and overt references to the occult? Why do they frequently wear clothing that explicitly glorifies death, rebellion, and destruction? It's often because the industry they serve is itself deeply steeped in certain spiritual practices. Many of them openly embrace mysticism, are involved in secret societies, and participate in rituals that the average person wouldn't even believe actually exist. And whether they fully realize the implications or not, they are being used as powerful conduits to lead millions of their followers into accepting what should never be accepted. When people see their favorite celebrities casually wearing these things, they often stop questioning them. They start thinking it's just another trend, it's just fashion, it's just harmless self-expression. But let me ask you something. Why does the enemy need to show up in a frightening, overt way when he can just as easily walk right into your home, into your mind, through your favorite public figures? Why would he try to scare you away from darkness when he can make it look glamorous, rebellious, and even powerful through those you admire? He knows that people tend to imitate what they admire. And when those individuals in the spotlight consistently wear symbols of darkness, when they dress in ways that mock God or celebrate sin, they are sending a powerful, albeit often subtle, message to millions. The message is, this is cool, this is normal, this is what success looks like. And without even realizing it, many people follow along. They wear the same things, they embrace the same styles. They unknowingly let those negative influences seep into their lives, not comprehending that they're stepping into dangerous spiritual territory. And it doesn't stop with celebrities. The biggest, most prestigious designers in the world are often part of this too. Have you ever noticed how frequently high fashion brands use religious mockery or blasphemy in their designs? Have you seen the collections that prominently feature upside-down crosses, sacrilegious imagery, and even direct references to demonic figures? And yet, people willingly walk into high-end stores and purchase these items, paying hundreds, sometimes even thousands of dollars, to clothe themselves in symbols that represent everything God clearly stands against. This is not just about what looks good aesthetically. This is about spiritual warfare, because the enemy understands something that many people unfortunately overlook. What you wear often represents what or whom you align yourself with. That's why in the Bible, clothing is frequently tied to identity and spiritual allegiance. Priests wore specific garments that visibly set them apart for God's service. Prophets often wore distinctive clothing that marked their divine calling. Even Jesus' robe was considered significant enough that Roman soldiers cast lots for it. Clothing has always carried deep meaning, and today, the fashion industry is actively using it to push an agenda that is anything but godly. The world desperately wants to convince you that these things don't really matter, that it's just fashion, that you're simply overthinking it. But let me ask you, when did we as a society become so numb to the overt symbols of darkness? When did we start casually embracing what we or previous generations used to instinctively reject as harmful or wrong? That's precisely how the enemy often works. He doesn't usually show up all at once in a terrifying display. He moves in gradually, subtly. He introduces these things little by little until people no longer recognize them for what they truly are. But we, as believers, are called to be different. We are called to stand apart, to be acutely aware, to walk in true discernment. We cannot afford to blindly follow trends just because the world says they're popular. We cannot allow celebrities and fashion icons to dictate what we put on our bodies, especially when those choices carry spiritual implications. Because at the end of the day, this isn't merely about style, it's about who or what we ultimately serve. And if what we wear overtly glorifies darkness, then we urgently need to ask ourselves, are we really walking in the light as we claim? Most people don't think twice about where their clothing actually comes from. They see something they like in a store, they buy it, and they wear it without a second thought, focusing only on its appearance or brand. But what if I told you that some of the things people casually put on their bodies carry much more than just fabric and stitching? What if I told you that certain specific pieces of clothing, particular accessories, and even some well-known brands have a distinct spiritual weight attached to them? Baggage that isn't just physical, but deeply and often darkly spiritual. You see, the enemy has a very clever way of hiding in plain sight. He knows that if he can get people to accept things without question, if he can get them to wear something without ever prompting them to ask where it originated or what it truly represents, then he's already won half the battle. And one of the primary ways he achieves this is through clothing that has been directly inspired by, or in some cases even specifically created for, dark spiritual purposes and rituals. There are numerous cultures and traditions around the world that utilize specific garments, jewelry, and accessories in their spiritual rituals. Some of these rituals are designed to summon spirits, to invoke certain kinds of energies, or even to dedicate a person to a particular spiritual force or deity. And while many people in modern, secularized society have largely forgotten these ancient connections, the spiritual realm certainly hasn't. Spirits don't simply cease to exist or lose their influence just because people stop believing in them. If something was originally created for a dark purpose, that inherent purpose doesn't magically disappear just because someone decides to wear it as a mere fashion statement. Have you ever noticed how certain styles or symbols seem to suddenly emerge out of nowhere? All at once, you see them on runways, prominently displayed in stores, worn by celebrities, and everyone just assumes it's the latest new trend. But if you were to dig deep enough, if you were to research their origins, you'd often find that these styles aren't random at all. Many of them have their origins in ancient spiritual practices, some of which were never, ever meant to be casually played with. or adopted by the uninformed. Take jewelry, for example. Some necklaces, rings, and bracelets carry specific inscriptions or markings that people don't even understand when they purchase them. Some of these are actually protective symbols derived from pagan rituals. Others are charms specifically meant to connect the wearer to particular spiritual forces or entities. And yet, they're mass-marketed and sold as everyday fashion accessories. They're worn by countless people who have absolutely no idea what they're truly inviting into their lives by doing so. Or consider certain fabrics, patterns, and designs that have deep historical roots in spiritual ceremonies. Some of these intricate designs were originally created for very specific purposes. To channel unseen energies, to mark sacred initiations, or to signify allegiance to a particular deity or spiritual entity. And yet, these same designs get picked up by the mainstream fashion industry, mass-produced, and sold to people who have no clue what they're literally wrapping themselves in. Even certain high-profile brand collaborations are sometimes tied to dark spiritual influences. Some well-known designers openly speak about their inspirations, candidly admitting that they were drawn to mysticism, ancient rituals, or occult practices when creating their collections. And yet, people still buy these clothes, thinking they're just being fashionable or edgy, never realizing that they're covering themselves in something that was never intended to be worn casually, something that carries a spiritual residue. You might be thinking, well, I didn't participate in any ritual, I just bought the shirt. But let me ask you something in return. If an object was known to be cursed, would you willingly bring it into your home? If something was verifiably used in a demonic ceremony, would you casually wear it around your neck? The truth is, spiritual influence doesn't require your personal belief to be real or effective. Just like poison doesn't stop being poison simply because someone doesn't believe in its harmful effects, a spiritually tainted object doesn't automatically lose its negative influence just because someone doesn't recognize its dark origin. This is precisely why discernment matters so profoundly. The Bible warns us over and over again to be incredibly careful about what we allow into our lives, to test the spirits, and to avoid anything that even has the appearance of evil. And yet, so many people walk around every single day wearing things that have been created with spiritual darkness, literally woven into their very fabric, completely unaware of the spiritual baggage they're carrying. The enemy doesn't need you to worship him outright. He just needs you to be careless. He just needs you to stop asking important questions. He just needs you to let your guard down, to be more focused on looking good on the outside than on being spiritually protected on the inside. And if he can successfully get you to wear something that was originally meant to invite darkness, then he's already found a subtle way to attach himself to you, often without you even realizing it. This isn't about being paranoid, it's about being wise. It's about being spiritually aware. Because the moment you start asking questions, the moment you start paying closer attention to the origins and symbolism of what you consume and wear, you'll begin to see just how much of this world's systems have been carefully, and often deceitfully, designed to lead people away from God. One seemingly innocuous piece of clothing, one catchy trend at a time. And when you finally see it for what it truly is, you won't just change what you wear, you'll profoundly change what you allow into every aspect of your life. There's something that most people don't fully realize about the world we live in. Almost nothing is truly random. The things we see, the things we hear, and yes, the things we wear, they all carry meaning, whether we recognize it or not. And yet, the world has effectively conditioned us to stop asking critical questions. We've been subtly trained to simply accept what's presented to us, to unthinkingly go along with whatever is popular, to naively assume that trends are just innocent trends, devoid of deeper influence. But let me ask you, Why do so many prominent brands, so many influential designers, and so many powerful corporations keep pushing the very same symbols over and over again? Why do we consistently see the same occult imagery intricately woven into clothing, cleverly hidden in logos, and subtly placed in the things people wear every single day, often without a second thought? The enemy doesn't primarily work through overt chaos. He works through calculated strategy. He knows that the quickest way to desensitize people to darkness is to surround them with it so much, so ubiquitously, that they eventually stop noticing it, stop questioning it, and ultimately stop resisting it. And one of the most effective, insidious ways to achieve that is through fashion. If he can get people to casually wear demonic symbols without a second thought, if he can skillfully turn the very things that once made people deeply uncomfortable into something they see and accept every single day, then he's already won a significant part of the battle for their minds and souls. Look at some of the biggest, most recognizable brands in the world. Their logos aren't just creative, abstract designs. Many of them actually carry deep, often hidden, spiritual meanings. Some of them are directly based on ancient sigils, which are specific markings historically used in witchcraft and various occult practices. Some of them intentionally incorporate numbers and symbols that are known to be tied to demonic influence or dark spiritual entities, and yet people walk around every day casually wearing them, effectively advertising them, and unknowingly representing them, often having absolutely no idea what they're truly aligning themselves with spiritually. It's certainly no accident that certain symbols keep persistently showing up on clothing. The all-seeing eye, the pentagram, the serpent, the inverted cross. These aren't just arbitrary artistic choices made by designers. They are signals, they are messages, they are, in a sense, declarations. And the people behind these brands, the ones at the top, often know exactly what they're doing. Some of them have even spoken about it quite openly, admitting their deep fascination with mysticism, their strong belief in hidden, esoteric knowledge, and their clear desire to push the boundaries between what is perceived as light and darkness. They embed these things directly into their designs, knowing full well that most people won't question them, won't look deeper, and every time someone puts on one of those pieces of clothing, they are, often unknowingly, coming into a spiritual agreement with something much bigger and often much darker than they realize. Some might still say, well, I don't believe in all that. It's just a logo to me. It's just fashion. But let me tell you something crucial. The spiritual realm doesn't operate based on what you personally believe or disbelieve. It operates based on what's real, on established spiritual laws and principles. And if something has an inherent spiritual meaning, that meaning doesn't just magically disappear simply because someone chooses to ignore it or remain ignorant of it. If a logo was specifically created with the intention of representing something demonic, then wearing it still carries that spiritual weight, that negative association, whether the wearer realizes it or not. The Bible is abundantly clear that we should diligently avoid even the mere appearance of evil. It instructs us to guard our hearts above all else, to be incredibly mindful of what we align ourselves with, both overtly and subtly. And yet, so many people walk around every single day wearing symbols that represent things completely and utterly opposed to God and His principles. They think it's harmless. They think it's just a matter of personal taste. But they don't realize that the very moment they put that garment on, they are sending a message, whether intentionally or not. They are making a statement. They are, in effect, identifying themselves with something, regardless of their conscious intent. The enemy absolutely loves it when people stop paying attention. He loves it when they dismiss these concerns as paranoia, when they think it's just fashion, just a brand, or just a trend. Because the less people question, the easier it is for him to keep relentlessly pushing his dark agenda forward, and That agenda, make no mistake, is to systematically normalize darkness, to make people so utterly comfortable with demonic imagery and ideologies that they no longer see anything inherently wrong with them. But we, as believers, are called to be different. We are called to stand apart, to walk consistently in the light, to be acutely aware of what we are allowing into our lives and onto our bodies. We cannot just wear something simply because it looks good or because it's popular. We have a higher responsibility. We have to ask the important questions. Where does this come from? What does it truly represent? What am I genuinely aligning myself with by wearing this? Because at the end of the day, this is so much bigger than just fashion. This is deeply spiritual. And if we don't start paying critical attention now, we might unfortunately wake up one day and realize, too late, that we've been unknowingly wearing the enemy's agenda without even knowing it. There was a time, not so long ago, when modesty and dignity were widely seen as virtues, as admirable qualities. A time when the way a person dressed often reflected their character, their values, and their respect for themselves and for others. But something significant has shifted. Something profound has changed in our culture. Look around today, and you'll observe that the fashion industry seems to be doing everything it possibly can to strip people of their inherent dignity, to systematically erase the concept of modesty, and to relentlessly push the boundaries further and further until virtually nothing is considered off-limits or inappropriate. Clothing has largely gone from being a way to express honor and self-respect to becoming, in many instances, a tool of temptation, a deliberate way to provoke, and a means of glorifying lust rather than promoting godliness. The enemy has always worked this way, subtly and deceptively. He knows that if he can successfully distort the way people see themselves, if he can convince them that their ultimate worth is inextricably tied to how much skin they show or how provocatively they dress, then he's already won a significant part of the battle for their hearts and minds. He takes what God originally intended for beauty, purity, and sacredness, and he skillfully twists it into something primarily meant to distract, to degrade, and ultimately to diminish a person's true value. He insidiously whispers the lie that modesty is outdated and old-fashioned, that dignity is somehow restrictive and boring, and that true confidence comes from revealing nearly everything rather than from wisely and respectfully covering. And far too many people, sadly, have believed that pervasive lie. The world around us constantly celebrates clothing that leaves absolutely nothing to the imagination. Everywhere you look, in advertisements, on social media, in entertainment, you see the glorification of the very things the Bible clearly warns against. Lust is actively promoted. Sensuality is openly celebrated. And many people don't even realize that what they choose to wear affects not only how they are perceived by others, but also the spiritual atmosphere around them, and even within them. The enemy doesn't just use words to tempt, he powerfully uses images. He uses appearance. He uses the way people dress to create stumbling blocks for others, to lead them down paths they were never meant to go. But this isn't just about avoiding temptation for the sake of others. It's also critically about the spiritual condition of the person actually wearing the clothing. When people consciously choose to dress in a way that openly embraces or promotes lust and immorality, they are, often unknowingly, aligning themselves with a spirit that is most certainly not of God. The Bible is unequivocally clear about this. It repeatedly warns against immodesty, against the spirit of seduction, and against using one's appearance as a means to gain attention for the wrong, often selfish, reasons. And yet, the world has completely flipped the script, successfully convincing people that if they aren't constantly flaunting themselves, they're somehow missing out on life or aren't truly empowered. The enemy knows exactly what he's doing. He's not just changing fashion trends, he's strategically changing mindsets. He's systematically convincing young men and women that their primary value lies in their physical appearance, that their ultimate worth is determined by how much they can reveal, and that being noticed and desired by the world is far more important than being honored and cherished by God. And once that destructive lie takes firm root in a person's heart, it's incredibly hard to break free from its grip. Think about how quickly these provocative trends spread. One celebrity wears something daring or overtly suggestive, and suddenly millions are rushing to copy it. One influencer posts a risque photo, and instantly it becomes the new unspoken standard of attractiveness or coolness. People often don't even stop to ask themselves if what they're wearing truly aligns with their personal values, with their faith, or with their ultimate purpose in life. They just go along with it, often driven by a fear of being left out, a fear of being labeled as too strict, too old-fashioned, or too conservative. But let me tell you something absolutely essential. Standing for righteousness has never been about being popular. Choosing modesty, choosing dignity, choosing to consciously reflect the purity and holiness of God in what you wear, that is not weakness. That is profound strength. It's a powerful refusal to let the world, with its ever-changing and often degrading standards, define your true worth. This isn't about adhering to a rigid legalistic dress code. It's about deeply understanding that what you choose to wear inevitably reflects who you are on the inside, what you believe, and what you value. It's about knowing that God calls His people to be set apart, to be different from the world around them, to represent Him faithfully, even in the seemingly small details of how they present themselves. It's about consistently asking yourself a simple yet profound question. Does what I'm wearing today honor God, or does it inadvertently serve the agenda of a world that is increasingly running away from Him? The enemy will undoubtedly keep pushing the boundaries. He will relentlessly keep trying to erase the clear line between purity and temptation, between godliness and worldliness. But we don't have to follow along. We don't have to give in to the pressure. We can choose to walk in wisdom. We can choose to clothe ourselves in dignity. We can choose to intentionally reflect the radiant light of God rather than the encroaching darkness of a world that has largely forgotten Him. And when we consciously make that choice, we don't just change our wardrobe, we can actually change the spiritual atmosphere around us. Conclusion: in a world where fashion often speaks louder than words, it's crucial to recognize that our clothing choices carry weight, spiritually and culturally. The symbols we wear, the styles we adopt, and the messages we convey can either align us with light or unknowingly draw us towards darkness. This isn't about fear, but about wisdom and discernment. We're called to be set apart, to honor God not just in our hearts, but in every aspect of our lives, including how we present ourselves. Let's choose to wear our values, to reflect dignity, and to ensure our attire honors God rather than the fleeting, often deceptive trends of the world. Consider your wardrobe. Does it reflect who you are in God? Make a conscious choice today to dress with intention and honor. If this message has enlightened you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel to watch our next videos.